You and I, and the whole of our planet, are transiting a time of accelerating complexity. Let's pause a moment to breathe. We are increasingly interconnected, affecting our very sense of self, our identity, personally and collectively. Who are we? Let's take another moment to breathe. This increasing speed is accompanied by an overwhelm of information, which can lead us to feeling paradoxically numb and anxious. In addition, our traditional orienting structures seem to no longer provide a source of solace or clarity. Where do we turn? In the midst of these questions, breathe, for there is more. There are mega crises of land, water, and air with our fellow sentient beings and amongst our own species. What can we do? This film offers purpose, direction, and meaning within the chaos we are experiencing. A new perspective, a novel reframing, an orientation that allows a fresh view of what we are transiting, as well as how to best contribute, and maybe most importantly, how we can awaken with a renewed sense of purpose, of meaning, and of self. We are in the epicenter of an unprecedented leap of consciousness. It is a complex time which began at the dawn of memory, when our creativity began to weave stories of our origins and destiny. This film weaves together multiple threads and confronts some given assumptions. Our story begins in a somewhat unexpected place, with love. In the words of Thomas Merton,
"Love is our true destiny. We do not find the meaning of life by ourselves alone. We find it with another."
In our story of love, life, and consciousness, it is necessary to begin with our place within this larger whole. When did we first appear? Outdated textbooks tell the story like this. We now know this isn't exactly how things happened, and that there are still many unanswered questions. This film will follow the mounting evidence that biological evolution is guided in two ways: by an underlying pre-physical structure of intelligence, and by real-time infusions of consciousness at our evolutionary emergent edge. In the depths of Earth's primordial caves, something extraordinary happened. Our self-expression burst forth in art, as beautiful, as full of passion as anything we could create today. And from the bones of hunted animals, we made music, not crude noises, but full octaves of sound. And equally profound, we expressed ourselves in symbolism, our thoughts preserved in abstract shapes, the written word taking form. What happened to our genetic coding that activated this stunning awakening? Genetically, we share 98% of our DNA with our closest cousin, the chimpanzee. Yet, why are we so different from chimps? In the 2% difference between us, science encountered an unexpected twist. Chimps have more chromosomes. Where did the missing chromosomes go? In a mystery that cannot be explained by any theory of evolution that we understand today, the two chromosomes inexplicably fused into a larger chromosome. This unprecedented chromosome held the characteristics that we expressed through the art, music, and symbols in those ancient caves. It is also responsible for our capacity for complex emotion and love, as well as intuition and superconscious states, all from an inexplicable fusion of two chromosomes into a superchromosome, profoundly exemplifying Aristotle's quote,
"The whole is greater than the sum of the parts."
In our exploration of love, we move next from some of the smallest of our biological structure to one of our body's largest parts, the heart, whose intelligence is biologically real. In a human embryo, the earliest sign of life is a beating heart, and there is no brain. The heart and brain form a physical partnership for biological functioning. They also connect as non-physical aspects of the mind and consciousness. This relationship is metaphysical in nature and beyond our physical senses. Spiritual traditions hold that the heart, rather than the brain, is the center of emotion and memory, as well as a portal to higher realms of consciousness, wisdom, intuition, self-healing, precognition, and of course, love. As the North American Cheyenne say,
Our first teacher is our own heart.
we are engineered for love. Love is defined both as a noun and as a verb. As a noun, give him my love. As a verb, I love you. Either way, love is only logical in the context of other. Love is an act. Love requires the beloved. Love in a vacuum is meaningless. In this story about love, life, and consciousness, let's go further back, way back, to the beginning. The initial unknowable pulse that created the universe has been called by modern science the Big Bang. The ancient Vedic traditions of India have a more organic name for this primordial cosmic act, coherent with the intention to create life. They called this moment the Big Breath.
That alone, by its own power, breathed without air. Besides or beyond that one, there was nothing. Darkness was further shrouded by darkness. That one came to be, even from this emptiness, by the power of its own intent.
The big breath, the emanation of consciousness, of awareness itself, breathed life into manifestation in order to love. It is from this perspective that love requires the beloved, that we can begin to understand the intention of duality. Love cannot be proved, nor can the origin of life or the existence of consciousness. We are embedded in them, In fact, we are them. They are the underpinnings of our reality. They pose the hard problem of science, a phrase about consciousness coined by the philosopher David Chalmers.
Consciousness poses the most baffling problems in the science of the mind. There is nothing that we know more intimately than conscious experience, but there is nothing that is harder to explain.
This field of love, of life, of consciousness is the continuing emanation of the big breath, the exhale of supreme intelligence, which imbued our universe with the intention to evolve from its original simplicity to complexity, held in an underlying pre-physical blueprint of evolutionary intelligence, whose fractal patterns are uploaded into form, giving rise to our physical world. These fractal patterns create the rooting that gives structure into which creativity, infusions of light intelligence, of consciousness, can then be downloaded, triggering leaps of evolutionary emergence. This uploading and downloading of non-physical intelligence paved the way for the manifestation of individuated, self-aware, sovereign beings capable of awakening as the beloved.
What is it, in the end, that induces a man to go his own way and to rise out of unconscious identity with the mass as out of a swathing mist? Carl Jung.
What does it mean to individuate, to awaken? As a newborn, we do not realize we have already begun to answer Jung's question. Slowly, as our brains and bodies develop, we realize that we are ourselves and separate from our mother. At times, this is liberating, and at times, terrifying. Such is the individuation process, both within oneself and within the collective. Why would we want to go on this uncertain journey? We are embedded in the intention of the big breath, the exhale of the supreme intelligence, in order to love. For the more I know who I am, the more I can love you. And in turn, the more I can love the origin of love itself. Human development is a fascinating process. Personal and collective individuation is so integral to our capacity to fully love that it is worth spending some time understanding this beautiful process. To do this, we are going to work with a stages of development chart as theorized by the philosopher Ken Wilber. Notice that it has 3 tiers, which are colored with a rainbow spectrum of color. The first tier begins the journey of humanity's history, starting with infrared and the ancient collective level called archaic, and the first anatomically modern humans. 200,000 years later, humanity moved into a stage signified by the color magenta, a world of magic, which is tribal, full of ritual and superstition. At the color red, humanity moved into a warrior world that was traditional, ethnocentric, and conformist. At amber, 5,000 years ago, the mythical world came online with its conformity, ethnocentrism, and faith in an all-powerful God or order. Coming online a mere 300 years ago is the orange, rational, modern worldview, which developed scientific experimentation and reasoning. as well as democratic procedures and institutions. At green, we see our postmodern world, which appeared during the 1960s with its new world views promoting civil rights and the care and protection of the environment. Approximately 95% of the world's population is in the higher levels of the first-tier structure. We will come back to this chart to discuss second and third tier a bit later in this film. This chart also shows our modern individual first-tier developmental process, which parallels that of the collective's historical maturation. For instance, at infrared, we see the developmental level of a newborn, ages 0 to 1. The symbiotic nature of an infant parallels the undifferentiated consciousness of early humans. At magenta, from 1 to 3 years of age, the child moves out of its symbiosis and separates into the mother-child relationship. At red, a 3 to 7-year-old child needs security and safety, but also wants power and control. They think playfully and oh so magically. At ages 7 to 13, mental control wins over the magical stage. They think logically and concretely. They are conformist and operate using rules and roles. From age 12 and into their teens, kids at orange are rational and achievement-oriented. They want excellence and self-esteem. At green, young adults become independent rational thinkers with original ideas and interpretations. They tend to be self-referential, pluralistic, ironic, and irreverent. They are also sensitive, individualistic, and multicultural. It is important to keep in mind that although this chart shows both the parallel collective and individual development, in practice, all collective growth is undertaken individually, one person at a time. Therefore, the more I individuate, the more sovereign, present, and awake I am, the more I embody the universe's capacity to love. Before we move on to the second and third tiers, let's look into what is required to make these evolutionary leaps of consciousness. To do this, we're going to talk about transcendence. We've all experienced transcendence. As infants, we crawled on all fours. Then, paralleling evolution, we learned to walk upright on 2 legs. We didn't lose the ability to crawl, but in a process of self-transcendence, our abilities now included both crawling and walking. Like the leap from crawling to walking, the capacities of each previous collective level has remained with humanity to this day. For instance, the artistic abilities intimately associated with the magical world were included as humanity moved forward into the more advanced mythic perspective. Magic's superstitious world was transcended by the mythical narratives of an all-powerful god or order. Thus, individually and collectively, humanity includes and transcends its former levels of consciousness. What separates first and second tiers are the experiences called transpersonal, which are non-physical events that awaken one's consciousness from the ordinary into a deeper and higher awareness. These states can be found in the expansive moments of meditation, love, yoga, in the beauty of nature, in art, poetry, or in awe of the wonders of the universe. These transpersonal states open the psyche to higher dimensions of consciousness, igniting new capacities such as flow states and synchronicities. This is literally a multidimensional awareness that transcends our time and space-bound physical world. And why is this important? Because as humanity, we are at a critical crossroads. We must reach beyond our current paradigm for new solutions. In the words of Albert Einstein,
You can't solve a problem on the same level it was created. You have to rise above it to the next level.
the second and third tiers are truly spiritual levels, the place where vertical development and spirituality unite. At Teal, one sees natural hierarchies, meaning that you understood Einstein's quote. You see a bigger picture that integrates the inner and outer worlds of your body, emotions, mind, heart, and spirit. The level of turquoise is exciting, and what this film is about. You see the world as alive and evolving. You can also question your assumptions and are open to not knowing. When fully embodied at this level, one lives from both their personal self and transpersonal self simultaneously. The third tier levels of indigo and into white are realities beyond the self, expanded states of consciousness. These altitudes are beyond what most human beings will ever experience and are rarely seen in people, much less understood. As the identification with the personal self continues to loosen, the revelation arises that one's life is consciousness, is love, and that the ultimate source and the self are one. At present, an approximate and unprecedented 5% of the population is at second or maybe even third tier. When we include all the individuals whose consciousness has ever reached these levels of awareness, we discover a dynamic collective field of intelligence. This field is so important to the next stages of our development that I need to pause and weave a few more pieces into our unfolding story. Let's begin by zooming out a bit to view the phenomenal moment we are embedded in. In our discussion, we have viewed the uploading and downloading of light as the activating factors in humanity's stages of development. But humanity is not a passive byproduct of these infusions. These leaps of consciousness were actually humanity's response, our innate upward impulse to evolve and to awaken as the beloved. And our evolution gets even more interesting. The time between these evolutionary leaps of consciousness is rapidly speeding up. The activating downloads of light have propelled this escalation, meaning that in our era, each person, no matter their level of development, is receiving absolutely massive infusions of light. This is how the philosopher Thomas Hübl expresses this moment.
We are experiencing an enormous acceleration in the world through the massive increase in the speed of data and through a strong influx of light. The two are mutually dependent and not separate. This process causes more energy to flow through us and the world to become a global village.
Throughout our history, our response to the vertical impulses of light have activated extraordinary breakthroughs in human development. This powerful co-creativity has transformed our world as evidenced by the Internet's global brain and the latest expression of human consciousness, artificial intelligence. The emergence of this technological global field arises in tandem with the dynamic collective field of transpersonal consciousness. It is to the structures and attributes of these fields that we now turn. Being in the zone of a great conversation is truly transformative. Great collaborations stand out amongst us. Take the musicians John Lennon and Paul McCartney, each a musical master. Put them together and boom, something unprecedented. The Beatles. This is alchemy, a moment in which novelty emerges. So crucial is the understanding of alchemy to the next stages of our immediate and future awakening that I now turn our attention to the non-physical structures that account for our emergence. To do this, we are going to talk about light, which is measured in wavelengths, a tiny bandwidth of which we see as our color spectrum. When talking about the metaphysical world, the metaphor of unseen light is often used to represent structures in the non-physical world and has been used in esoteric art for millennia. To understand alchemy, we are going to need to understand what happens when the physical encounters the non-physical. Starting with the downloading of light entering at the crown, its stream undulates as it encounters the organs of the physical body, and then, like an electrical current, it grounds into the earth. Likewise, the upward flow of non-physical energy also undulates through the body, nourishing it with life force. These two opposing currents create vortices of vibrant energy called chakras, which in Sanskrit means wheel. Each chakra is connected not only to the physical organs of the body, but also to their metaphysical function. The same phenomenon that we noted earlier in the heart-brain-mind connection. These upward and downward streams combine to create a toroidal field of energy, which has the same energetic structure found in the Earth's electromagnetic field. This non-physical field of energy is called the aura, or light body. Interconnected with the chakras are interpenetrating layers, metaphysical structures of light that contain a person's unique incarnational attributes. With this rudimentary understanding of the light body, let's return to Lennon and McCartney and the energetics of alchemy. People share the same basic physical and metaphysical structures, as well as unique individuality. Alchemy is initiated as each person energetically reaches out, seeking a state of coherence. This requires trust and a surrender into mutuality, wherein a new whole, larger than the two individual persons, can emerge. This field also has an electromagnetic quality, a receptivity that pulls in the creativity of higher intelligence, initiating the nascent manifestation process. Due to the field's unprecedented novelty, a new awareness, unavailable at the individual level, arises within the consciousness of each participant. This is the alchemical process of collective emergent intelligence. Alchemy is a transpersonal experience that calls in light, wherein we become microcosmic co-creators of universal intelligence. People are now coming together to create intentional fields of alchemy. These novel collaborations are being called we spaces. These are groups of individuals, not practicing individually, but as a group with the intention to create an emergent field of awareness, spontaneously arising with novel creativity, perspectives, thoughts, and solutions. In our current times of severe planetary crises, we need new modalities that begin to access these states of emergent awareness. Modalities that open channels to new questions and unprecedented answers. So crucial is the capacity to co-create transpersonal learning environments that I wish to turn our attention to what is being created, the subtle energetic structure called a morphogenetic field. This term was coined by the philosopher Rupert Sheldrake, from the Greek morph, for the word form, and genesis, for creation, literally meaning the creation of form. This subtle field of intelligence can most easily be seen in the beautiful collective unison of a flock of starlings, or a school of fish. These fields underlie our physical reality, like an architect's blueprint, giving rise to our physical world. The morphogenetic fields that humans generate have strong attractive capacities and are reflective of the levels of consciousness that created them. They amplify the state of the psyche, which explains the heightened mystical experiences of worship or dance. And conversely, the terrifying aspects of mob behavior. Our intentions and actions embody the emergent edges of consciousness. And thus we have a moral imperative to do the inner work necessary to embody our highest ideals. The morphic genetic fields we generate really matter. When we intentionally create a coherent field of love, its magnetic and alchemical property attracts others into its compassion and peace. The inner work necessary for the process of individuation, of love becoming the beloved, is a practice. In a seeming paradox, the poet Rumi had this to say about love.
Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it.
Oh, so much easier said than done. It is so much more convenient to look outside of ourselves for the source of our isolation. Rumi again points us towards maturation.
Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I am changing myself.
Where does one seek the barriers to love within oneself? The answer is the hidden places, in the shadows. Which brings us to the topic of shadow work. In a video about love and the clarity and differentiation offered by shadow work, it is interesting that we now turn to look at the scientific revolution. Remember the leap of consciousness from a mythic way of thinking to a rational one? This unprecedented scientific approach gave humanity a new objectivity regarding the outer world and also the inner self. In the external world, this objectivity looks at, labels, measures, and quantifies things. In the inner world, this objectivity looks at the things that make it up, specifically one's emotions and thoughts. Here is the domain of shadow work and the process of seeking all barriers to love that Rumi spoke of. This is the essence of mindfulness meditation, a process of differentiation, of awareness that I am not my thoughts or emotions, but the self who is in this present moment witnessing them. Shadow work is so integral to our individual and collective capacity to hold higher states of consciousness that it is worth spending a bit of time understanding how and where shadows arise, and even what is meant by the word shadow. The following is a simplified exploration of shadow work. For each of us, shadow material arises individually in the course of life, as well as from our ancestors, and via the imprint of our collective cultures. Let's begin with our own individual shadow, because we all encounter difficulties in the process of life, which need safe places to allow our nervous systems to heal and decompress. Trauma happens when there is not a safe place for an overwhelming event to be integrated. The unprocessed experience stays held in the physical body and in the light body. This area of contracted energy, of suppressed light, is the shadow. This is a remarkable self-protective ability of the physical and non-physical nervous systems. Shadow work is the process of finding the safety needed to allow the unfelt, unconscious energy and emotions to enter into one's consciousness to be released. The unprocessed trauma that we inherit from our ancestors and absorb from our collective environments requires the same process of illuminating their shadowy nature so that their distortions can also be made conscious and released. The infusions of light that propel the individuation process download through our crowns and then descend, slowing down in frequency as the light is absorbed by each chakra. This means that the activations of light are initially absorbed by the higher chakras associated with the brain and mind, followed by the lower chakras. The shadow material held within the layers of the light body can obscure and distort this process, significantly interrupting heart-brain-mind coherence. Light entering the crown activates the individuation process. When it cannot adequately include the heart, a hyper-mental individualism occurs. This overblown individualism, we see particularly in the West, is not a problem of individuation, but the result of the distortions of trauma that limit the mind's integration with the intelligence of the heart. On a collective level, the unconscious pain of individualism can become institutionalized in opportunistic, even predatory behaviors within political agendas, corporate greed, and the military-industrial complex. There is one other important aspect to understand about downloads of light. Their higher vibration raises the frequency of the entire light body, the positive effect being the raising of one's consciousness. The not-so-easy simultaneous effect is that the unfelt shadow material also raises in frequency, pushing itself into one's awareness to be healed. Thus, the massive infusions of light that we are receiving not only awaken us, they also bring the suppressed shadow material to the surface. On a global level, this huge infusion of light and its triggering repercussions is affecting everyone, everywhere, regardless of their level of psychological sophistication. Vast amounts of unfelt individual and collective shadow material, whether political, social, cultural, racial, religious, or sexual, financial, industrial, climate, or medical, all of this across the entire planet is being pushed to the surface. Is it any wonder that we are uncertain, stressed out, and afraid? And yet, there is hope. When we can view the instability of our current era not as random, meaningless chaos, but as the path through which our suppressed histories seek awareness, healing, and integration. This perspective is enhanced by understanding that the same infusions of light that are bringing our suppressed planetary collective trauma to the surface are simultaneously pouring into each and every person the heightened creativity that can lead to the breakthroughs so needed at this critical crossroads. Our spiritual masters were the early pioneers of our era. They embodied the inner essence of these streams of creativity, and so changed their world. They received and transmitted love.
You, yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. The Buddha. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Confucius. Love each other as I have loved you. Jesus.
These esoteric images are pictorial teachings about the energetics of love. Notice the use of their hands in positions called mudras to emphasize the significance of their hearts, as well as the illumination around their heads and hearts. In this wider image of the Buddha, we see him receiving light intelligence through his crown and transmitting it through his heart to his followers. Energetically, this flow of love, of heart intelligence, looks like this. As the individual awakens into third tier, the human mystic moves into a state of union with Source, the supreme originating intelligence, or God. Beyond that, there is no other. Love and the beloved have reunited into the originating non-dual state. And Wilber concludes this process of individuation here. His powerful summary allows us to see new horizons and to ask new questions. He writes,
If the height of natural evolution is the human being, a person, why should the height of spiritual evolution be anything less?
Here is an important question. What if the height of spiritual evolution isn't the human being? What if something else is going on? We'll get back to these provocative questions later in this film. In our journey from the ancient world to humanity's highest adepts, you are probably also thinking that this ascent of humanity is also a descent into materialism. And worse, there is tremendous suffering, war, climate disaster, and myriad other terrifying crises all around us. The notion of a fall from grace has haunted humanity throughout history. And it's not difficult to accept that something is terribly wrong. In our despair, it is easy to view humanity as a plague upon the earth. And indeed, there is much written about the need to heal humanity's disease of separation, or that separation has infected humanity. In the face of the horrible destruction we see around us, it is deeply counterintuitive to ask the following question: what if this sense of separation was not a disease? Maybe nature knows what she is doing. I know this is a deeply counterintuitive thought, but by pathologizing humanity as diseased, one assumes that nature has made a mistake, that Homo sapiens' big brain has run amok and obviously become a pariah, a glitch, a cancer, and is no longer in harmony with the earth, keeping this sense of separation intact. The implication is that humanity is no longer embedded in the whole of nature and is now somehow in a superior position to judge when one of her parts, humanity itself, is not acting in accordance with her evolutionary path. Even in our well-meaning language of needing to save the planet, heal the planet, rescue the planet, keeps the planet as a separate it and preserves this misperception. In a bit of a paradigm shift, let's take a new perspective. Let's presume, and the overwhelming evidence supports this, that nature doesn't make mistakes. This would mean that humanity is in a necessary stage of the planet's evolution, and that three things are occurring simultaneously. Humanity is at its height of individuated, self-aware development. This would mean that humanity is in a necessary stage of the planet's evolution. 3. The severe crises we face are terrifyingly real. We are poised between coherence and disorder, a tipping point, a critical threshold in which a small change can alter the evolution of the whole. So again, I ask the counterintuitive question: what if this sense of separation was not a disease? A small change, a shift in our perspective, opens new questions. Why does this sense of separation exist? And what purpose does it serve? Ironically, we go through this separation in the service of love. This is not a disease of separation. It is a process of separation. We move through the stages of development in order to individuate and to be capable of awakening as the beloved. In the words of the philosopher Martin Buber,
spirit is not in the I, but between I and you.
At its core, this film is about harmony and relationship. You and I, and the larger whole that we are a part of. Humanity is part of the vast field of intelligence of our planet. This intelligence includes her other parts: single-celled prokaryotes, dolphins, trees, birds, fungi, and your dog or cat. Each of her parts has a place in the whole. Humanity is the individuated, self-aware, and observant part of the energetic whole of Gaia. Our most advanced masters have shown us the heights of such development. As a sovereign part of her intelligence, as I awaken, Gaia awakens, We are not separate. Gaia is a name of Greek origin, a personification of the earth. The names Mother Earth and Pachamama also speak to our innate sense that we are embedded in a living, breathing organism. What you are seeing is the planet breathing. These images are based on 20 years of data from NASA satellites that have globally observed all plant life at the surface of the land and ocean. Earth is a birthing portal of life, a view shared by many traditional societies and indigenous peoples today. In the words of Max Dillamoon Harrison, an Aboriginal elder,
Mother Earth, she's the one that gives birth to everything we see around us, everything we need to survive.
The Earth can best be understood as a superorganism, an alive, breathing planet, which includes the sun as her power center, her moon regulating the pulse of life. This birthing portal is the interface between non-physical information and the physical manifest world. It is a place where the underlying order informs the arising of the magnificence of life. It is the specific location in the universe where the mystery of life awakens from matter. Earth's development, structure, and history is a complex story. Her biology is not fully terrestrial. According to physicist and cosmologist Jude Currivan, she was pollinated non-terrestrially by asteroids,
which transported not only more water, but also complex prebiotic molecules to her surface.
This pollination is not only physical. Remember this image of the Buddha, and in particular the light at his crown? As we awaken to spirit, Earth is pollinated by the light intelligence, received through our crowns and transmitted through our hearts. Thus, our Earth is a birthing portal and much, much more. She is a transitional and transformational membrane, the liminal space of possibilities between the unmanifest and the manifest world, between the non-physical and the physical, a place where matter awakens and participates in the evolution of consciousness, of life, of love. This understanding that we individuated human beings are the self-aware, observant part of the whole of our planetary consciousness brings us into a new inner knowing of the sacred significance of what it means to be this part of this very specific whole. To understand this on an even deeper level, let's look at what it means to be part of the whole. The word for whole in Greek is holos, and the word for part is on. Together they form the word holon. A holon is something that is simultaneously a whole in and of itself, as well as a part of a larger whole. For example, an atom is a whole thing made up of protons, neutrons, and electrons, which are its parts. In turn, atoms form the parts of whole molecules. And in the jump to life, numerous types of molecules become the parts of the most primitive type of cell on Earth, the prokaryote. These prokaryotic cells form the foundation upon which all of life evolved. From simplicity to complexity, these primitive cells evolved into intricate cells, such as this neuronal cell, which banded together with other parts to form a whole organ, the human brain. With increasing complexity, numerous organs form the wonder of a human being. Our reality is made up of holons. So crucial is the understanding of holons that we're going to dive into a few of their properties. Holons emerge. When an oxygen atom and two hydrogen atoms come together, a novel and absolutely unprecedented holon emerges, a molecule necessary for organic life: water. Emergence is emergent, which means absolutely unpredicated by the past. In another quote, Wilber states,
"We can never know exactly what any holon will do. Self-transcendent emergence always means, to some degree, surprise."
This emergent property of holons will figure in a big way to our discussion a little bit later in this film. Remember our infant learning to walk? The self-transcendent leap of human development that includes and transcends crawling? Well, holons act the same way. Water, which is molecularly a superior holon, includes and transcends its junior holons, its individual atoms. This is an inherent creativity in all parts of a whole, a transcending capacity to reach beyond and introduce novelty. As Aristotle said,
"The whole is greater than the sum of the parts."
this means that holons are self-transcendent. And in their leaps to the greater complexity of new wholes, we see the evidence of the underlying subtle creative intelligence of the universe, the unseen architect's blueprint. Here is another important quality of holons. Atoms make water possible, right? And water goes beyond, way beyond, the potential of those atoms. This means that, and this language is a bit technical, so bear with me, the junior holons set the possibilities for the higher holon, and the superior holon sets the probabilities of the lower. In the emerging complexity of life, cells, the next superior holon, will have agency and creativity over its junior holon, the water within its membrane. Holons have social qualities as well. This can be seen in the context of an individual ant, a holon, whole in and of itself, who is a member of a social holon, the ant colony. In organic life, these social holons are relational networks containing morphogenetic fields of consciousness. It is from these subtle fields of increasing intelligence that evolution moves into life and ever greater wholes, from the simplicity of single-celled prokaryotes to the complexity of a human being. Ken Wilber calls complex sentient organisms, such as human beings, deep holons. Here's a beautiful quote.
"The greater the depth of a holon, the greater its degree of consciousness. And one can perhaps begin to see that a spiritual dimension is built into the very fabric, the very depth of the cosmos."
It is to love, and this spiritual dimension, that I wish to return. Remember our quote from Rumi?
Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it.
Finding our barriers to love is a process of differentiation, of integrating our emotions and thoughts, enough to hold a coherent field of attunement and intimacy with another person, a state of presence. Presence allows for the deepening of experiences beyond the self, transforming one into an increasingly transpersonal being. One of the hallmarks of our learning is an increasing capacity to open to higher fields of consciousness, streams of intelligence and love, and then to transmit these streams through our hearts. This path of individuation and its associated existential pain is the process of separation that allows one to differentiate into a sovereign being capable of deep presence and love of one another. The ancient Greeks were more nuanced in their language regarding love, using the words eros and agape. Eros for the masculine, agape for the feminine, regardless of gender. Wilber offers this insightful addition. Eros, the masculine drive, reaches up to the sky and the heavens, emphasizing agency. On the horizontal, the feminine, agape, stretches out for relationship, emphasizing communion. We'll return to these two words, agency and communion, in just a bit. From this discussion about the masculine and feminine qualities of love, it is essential that we include our systemic cultural crises of racism, colonialism, and globalization. For as much as we speak about love, life, and consciousness, we are at a critical tipping point. On the one hand, the ascent of humanity, approximately 5% of the population, has entered into higher states of consciousness. On the other, this unprecedented ascent is coupled with a terrifyingly parallel descent into equally unprecedented mega disasters across the planet. A deep understanding of the mechanics of biological evolution is necessary at this juncture. In the language of Jude Currivan,
entire ecosystems dynamically co-evolve, enabling optimal balances between their resilience and adaptability, precisely poised between coherence and disorder, and known as critical states. Such systems are nonlinear, where a small change can cascade into a much larger effect.
We must be accountable and walk both, the chaotic and the coherent, staying present and accountable, and listening for the small changes that are ready to emerge. Remember our initial premise? Our world is imbued with intention, and love requires the beloved. In order to understand the communion in the space between us, let's return to social holons and the difference between an ant colony and the intentional fields of alchemy, which create a morphogenetic field of self-aware, integrated, coherent, and here's the evolutionary leap. Even though they are far from perfect, these are self-transcending individuals.
The whole is greater than the sum of the parts.
5% of the population has made this evolutionary leap of consciousness. This small percent of humanity has created a strong enough morphogenetic field to initiate a new and emergent energetic movement, a transcendence over its individual parts. This is the crux of our journey. This is how Ken Wilber defines this moment.
The many, differentiation, become one, integration, and are increased by one, the new holon.
Let's hear that again.
The new holon.
In our discussion of the properties of holons, we noted that holons emerge like atoms to molecules. Emergence is emergent, which means something new that is absolutely unpredicated by the past. Now we have gotten to something quite beautiful. We are not alone, individually or as a species. A new holon has included, and more importantly, transcended humanity. There is a new and emerging whole that we are part of. The implications of this are vast. But first, it is imperative that I include the justified critique of the all-too-human elitism expressed by some second-tier thinking. The emergence of this new higher holon is a poignant humbling of our human mind and ego. This unprecedented event means that the brilliance of humanity, whether second, third, fourth, or fifth tier, has literally been transcended. It is a tremendous relief to simply be a part and included in a higher whole. Humanity is faced with innumerable spiritual, philosophical, and existential crises, and indeed, there is a strong imperative to act with tremendous urgency. Thus, at this moment in our collective journey, it seems paradoxical to surrender, and yet, maybe it is crucial. All spiritual traditions point to the essential role of surrender in the process of transformation. Beyond acceptance of the crises surrounding us, surrendering into a higher intelligence allows for a release of fear, a new spaciousness that opens the heart for discovery of greater truths, new hypotheses, and a wider range of choices to act upon. Surrendering into this higher holon allows for an alchemical shift from one way of being into another. To address the dire circumstances humanity faces, we must grow beyond that which is familiar, to explore new ways of understanding our part in the whole. We will need to address our inner fears when our belief systems are shaken, and to understand that this surrender is not an abdication of self or of responsibility. This surrender is not passive or a state of being dominated by a higher holon. This higher holon was able to emerge in accordance with the underlying blueprint because of humanity's increasing individuation and self-transcendence. Let's take another look at the holonic structure of what has emerged. Remember the cell called the prokaryote? This single-celled organism is the most primitive form of life within the consciousness of the planet. Ken Wilber calls this foundational level Gaia, which makes sense because all life has included and transcended this simple cellular structure. What then shall we call this new holon? In looking for a name, I turned to ancient Greek and a word meaning joint agreement, and as a verb to fit together, Harmonia. This is a new vision of our planetary consciousness. At this critical tipping point, we need new narratives. As compelling as this vision may be, what really matters is a new experience of this new paradigm. Our adepts have led the way into this emerging world. Harmonia's field has two distinct qualities of love. The first is a continuation of our agency, the drive of Eros, felt as the vertical, upward, evolutionary pull into her higher intelligence. This invitation is accepted by stretching beyond one's comfort zone and surrendering into the unknown, leading to a flow state of novelty and creativity. The surrender into her is met with a new evolutionary impulse, a horizontal and interconnected communion, an embrace of wholeness, of agape. Harmonia's consciousness is a field of both masculine agentic awakening and feminine communal awakening. Harmonia is not a new matriarchy, nor does it end patriarchy, but includes and transcends both. The heart field of Harmonia binds individuals together, easing the process of separation and establishing a magnetic field of coherence through which alchemy and evolution can emerge. In light of Harmonia's awakening, understanding this property of holons is essential. The junior holons set the possibilities of the higher, and the superior holon sets the probabilities of the lower. Let's take a look at where our continuing possibilities and Harmonia's probabilities are leading us. Our story began in the depths of her primordial caves, where our self-expression burst forth in art, music, and symbols, which were the tools of our uniquely human expression. Within our stages of development, we invented other tools to express ourselves. The emergence of a technological global field has arisen in tandem with the collective field of transpersonal awareness. Our latest tool of self-expression is artificial intelligence, which is defined as machines or software able to perform tasks that normally require human intelligence. AI is generally classified as machine learning, neuronal networks, language processing, and robotics. These are mechanical extensions of the human brain and mind, and as such, they are physical expressions of human intelligence. Non-physical, transpersonal intelligence is radically different. It reaches beyond the physical into realms of non-physical light intelligence, uploading information from the underlying blueprint and downloading infusions of higher consciousness, which includes the intelligence of Harmonia, as well as infusions of light from Source. Learning to reliably receive and implement this transpersonal knowledge is the crucial evolutionary capacity that arises in tandem with our emerging AI world. Let's take a look at how our light body receives this information. Starting with the heart and brain's non-physical capacities, we look into the layers of the light body connected to their metaphysical functions. When the heart and mind have a strong coherence, the energetic vibratory rate of the entire light body rises, allowing connection with one's higher self, the guiding intelligence of purpose, direction, and meaning. In stabilizing this higher frequency extension of the heart and mind, one reaches into the evolutionary capacities of a multidimensional human being. In the words of Albert Einstein,
You can't solve a problem on the same level it was created. You have to rise above it to the next level.
The emergence of Harmonia is that next level. Our awakening, transpersonal, and multidimensional capacity to receive her intelligence raises us to the next level of our evolutionary path. We are the individuated, self-aware, observant part of the whole of Harmonia's consciousness. As such, in your ability to implement what you have received, you become the update. Because you have risen to a new level of consciousness, able to access new solutions on behalf of the whole.
The visions we offer our children shape the future. It matters what those visions are. Often they become self-fulfilling prophecies. Dreams are maps. Carl Sagan.
We began in the ancient dream time of Harmonia's caves, the evolutionary leap of consciousness that made us human. As our story unfolded, we individuated, emerging into an evolutionary edge of multidimensional beings, whose transpersonal capacity created a morphogenetic field strong enough to initiate the transcendence of the next whole, Harmonia. As individuated parts of her intelligence, our agency, our ability to awaken, to transcend self, activated Harmonia's awakening and transcendence. Likewise, our communal ability to transmit through our hearts is actually Harmonia as the planetary beloved, radiating love into the cosmos. It is from this new vision of our planet as a conscious birthing portal that we can begin to glimpse her expanding multidimensional role in the evolution of the universe.
Sarvajanam eva shama